Um, what the issue is simply is when I say we now know, I'm talking about people, groups within the intelligence community who've gotten together and discussed it and looked at the intelligence, particularly some of the intelligence we picked up after the operation. When people are more casual, they would tend to talk more afterwards, it turns out, than during it. During it, it's very quiet. But the point being that um, uh, uh, I'm not suggesting there was anything amounting to a report to such. Nobody would report that because the president has already decided what the reality is. And the community's business, you don't tell a president that, you're wrong. It seems like it's always, this old cliche about intelligence. It's intelligence to please. And in this case, it seems that we have a process called the National Intelligence Estimate, NIE, and I don't think anybody's done a national intelligence estimate on the whole Syrian gas situation. At least as far as I know, there has not been one. So when I say we know, when I quote my person's quoting, he's not saying there's a piece of paper I'm waving. He's saying that there's people from various parts of the intelligence community, signals intelligence, human intelligence, intelligence just from the theoretical aspect, they all have serious problems with the story that the White House now insists is the story, which is that the only people that had nerve agent as of August the 21st inside Syria was the Syrian army. And therefore, after the event, the only suspect was Syria. When, as certainly we now know in the story I've just done, in which I quote from a document that does exist, that they say that they cannot find or they don't think it exists, that is, the White House says that. So we know that at the minimum, common sense would say, since they knew other people had sarin at the time, you should at least have an open mind and have two suspects. But never, one suspect only. It's only one suspect. And then they're in the position of not wanting to acknowledge that there could be another one. I mean, that to me, I'll tell you right now, the defense community is worried about this. It may be over. This war is looking very bad for the Syrian opposition. Many of the secular forces, some are disbanding, some are coming in, some are fighting with the more jihadists, or if you will, Wahhabi, Salafist groups, funded mostly by Saudis and Qatar. And so, at the end game, in the American intelligence community, one of the problems they pose, never mind that the White House says there's no such thing as sarin in the hands of the rebels, they worry about how do we handle the fact that when these guys, if they're defeated, start giving the know-how and the sarin they have and the technical means for making it to their fellows in North Africa, to their colleagues in the Middle East, to in Anbar province, where the Sunni fundamentals are very strong. How do you know?
People always ask about the smoking gun. In this instance, in your opinion, if somebody were to ask you, okay, Mr. Hersh, what is the smoking gun to point for the people? Because you mentioned there was the Turkish themselves, from intercept, there was some conclusion about this. But there is anything that could resemble a smoking gun in this instance?
What's a smoking gun? Do I have a document in my a piece of tape in my back pocket? No, but as I said earlier, when you're planning an operation, and what do I mean by an operation? Were Turkish forces in Eastern Ghouta? No. This is the conclusion of many senior smart people in the American intelligence community that Turkey had a role in what happened. We know that the MIT, the Fidan's intelligence service, and we know that some elements of the gendarmerie, the paramilitary units, we know they had contacts in training and moving some of the chemicals and other supplies into the area around Aleppo and places like that for the rebels, for the opposition. We know that was a very active role. We know that Mr. Hakan Fidan has supported openly many of the more radical units, and Erdogan too has a propensity for tolerating the more radical units, and so nobody's saying that we had any idea what was going to happen beforehand, but we certainly knew afterwards because we listened to people say things they say when things work. You understand that we also have picked up. I write about this in the article in the London Review. We had an intelligence report in late July, early August, in which there was an enormous concern about the losing war. Erdogan was very worried about the losing war. It was coming to no end, and he has a lot of problem if the war ends abruptly. Where do you think the crazies are going to go? They're going to go into Turkey. They've already, as you know, there was a shooting in. Some people got to Istanbul with some weapons. You know the story the other day. There's been trouble there already. And so the last thing he would want would this war to turn out badly. First of all, he's invested an enormous amount. Turkey's in a big fight with Russia, which is not a position they like very much traditionally. Over classical years, that's not a relationship they want to go too badly. And so he's going to lose. His big enemy, Bashar Assad's going to stay in power. He's going to be an enemy because he's an enemy of Bashar. He's now an enemy of Russia. There's a lot of reasons for him to want to do things. So this was something they thought might happen, and when they looked at the intelligence after the event, they came to the conclusion that indeed. And there's some other things. There's other things. There was an awful big increase in supplies going into the rebel territory. I didn't write about it because it was an extraordinary amount of supplies went in.
What kind of supplies?
Small arms. 350 tons in one case to some units.
You mentioned the 40-man pads.
Well, that was earlier.
And when was that?
That was after Benghazi, after the fall of Benghazi. I also write about Benghazi and what happened there. After the fall of Benghazi, we withdrew. The Americans were involved in a effort to supply arms through Syria into Turkey and into all elements, the secular and unsecular. And that went on for a long time very secretly with the money paid by Turkey, Erdogan, the Saudis, and the Qataris. And when that fell apart at Benghazi, and they pulled it. But it was after that what I call the rat line. A rat line is a line it's a line of where you move things. The CIA my CIA, American CIA, is very competent at, for example, from Pakistan into Iran. There's a number of places agents could move in and out. There were people that were protected, and the money was paid to dissidents inside Iran, the Azeris and others, the Kurds. And they could develop a little communication line. We had something like that going for more than a year, and that ended with Benghazi. But
is the rat line still going on now?
Well, one of the things that is very suspicious, and people suspect, and they believe, is the rat line still certainly moved man pads. We would not let man pads go in. And so here we pull out in September, and a month and a half later, there they are, about 40 of them. And a Russian helicopter full of Syrians was shot down, and another. It was very upsetting because it was an escalation we didn't want. We're trying to control support.
Well, so there is a larger question about the role of Turkey. Do Turkey, as an ally in NATO, but ally of the United States, dare to go to do something like that? What if this was discovered at the time that it shouldn't be discovered, not afterward?
You mean about what happened on August 21st?
Yes, I'm talking about being plotting to do such thing, and to do United States.
There was a lot of talk. I didn't write about it. There was a lot of talk about a meeting inside Turkey around August the 12th to 13th with the Free Syrian Army and other units, talking about a big development. And I just, the person I knew who knew something about it and it's disavowed it. So I don't like that. I don't like if anybody says I didn't say that, I don't remember that, I don't run it. So when I'm running stuff with some people who not only talk to me, but the London Review hired two very excellent fact checkers, people that worked for me a great deal when I used to write for the New Yorker about such matters, two young men who knew how to do it. And so, none of this proves anything. I can tell you I fact checked all week. I can wave a document, which I have right here. I'm going to turn around. And that doesn't, I have a document that they claim that doesn't exist. So what do I do with it? I'm not going to make it public because there could be some marking on it that would reveal where it went. I just quote very little from it. But I will tell you the first line of this very sensitive report because I published it in the magazine. The first line of the report says, the Al-Nusra Front, Associated Sarin Production Cell, it's a cell, a unit there, is the most advanced sarin plot since Al-Qaeda's pre-9/11 efforts.
That's a DIA
DIA paper,
Paper.
To the deputy director,
Yeah.
very closely held.
Why they stopped circulating and curtailing the DIA brief?
It was a daily brief. It's
Daily
called
brief,
the Syrian,
yeah.
Syrian report, known as the SIREP. I have two different answers. I know it stopped. One was that people in the White House did want, obviously, once April and May took place and there were attacks, they didn't want too much information out there. Is one obvious answer. They cut it off. They didn't stop writing it, but they stopped circulating it. We're talking about inside. They cut the circulation to very narrow. If it was 100 people, I'm guessing, but they reduced it enormously to 10
Because
people.
it will point to a
Well,
Nusra, to Turkey.
no, because there was something in it they didn't like, and that's one thing. And something in it got some people very angry, and obviously, if you're going to get honest, I don't know the answer to the question. I know they had a report going and they limited it. I think one of the ideas is that it's not hard to think that the reports would somehow mention the possibility that sarin was being made or used by others. But and that was the intent, that was the implication I got. But, there's a million others.
From your assessment, the cooperation between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and others, Jordan, etc., in the region vis-a-vis Syria, is still going strong, or there is some conflict and
Well,
some
I'm not an
not
expert.
so well?
Oh, well, you know that the Qataris and the Saudis are, it's. So I really don't know all the, all I know is what I read. I haven't really talked to people involved. I haven't gone to the region in a long time, a couple of years. Actually, that's true. I was in Beirut last year. I don't. I know that Bashar. I have every reason to think Bashar Assad's #1 enemy. He'd like to see Bandar's head on a stick. I know that. So he looks at the Saudis, and I do know that long before, not long, but months before the Arab Spring began, inside Syria, they diplomatically ordered the Saudi attaché, defense attaché, was ordered out of the country. And at the time I was told, anecdotally, just told that it was because he was caught passing arms and guns to the Muslim Brotherhood. Homs has always been an area of opposition. And so my guess is that Bashar anticipated trouble long before it began, which may be why he overreacted, as I think he probably did in the South in the beginning, or at least some of his aides did. I think they knew trouble was coming. The Saudis were going to make a move. Not necessarily to get rid of him, but to reduce him in stature.
Mm-hmm. Do you think after Erdogan visited Iran, there was some kind of rapprochement, and it did help? You mentioned in your article about the $13 billion gold that they were exchanged.
You bet.
Do you think with this being uncovered, that with their secret plot, do you think this is going to affect their relation with Russia, with Iran, and to what extent?
It doesn't matter what I think, because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. I can think a million things.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just Turkey supports the agreement we have going with Iran, and that's important to the White House, and I think that's one factor. On the other hand, I don't think it's a thinking. I'm asking you again. I'm told by people in the community that underneath everything, there's no real love in Turkey for America. Mm-hmm. There's just no real love. Mm-hmm. And, it's not as if they go to bed dreaming of us.
Going back to your article, you mentioned about the target when they were planning to attack Syria September 2nd. That target list was expanding to the degree that they were targeting Assad. Almost, you mentioned.
No, I don't mention. That's called decapitation in America. When you target the leader of of a country, I have no. All I can tell you is the target list expanded, because the explanation I was given, among other things, some of the Syrian missiles and weapons are dug so deep, buried underground, that a tomahawk missile, has a very small warhead. It can kill people in immediate, but it doesn't penetrate. So they were going to bring in B-52s with 2,000-pound bombs to drop them on these targets. And that's very expensive because they all have CPU little computers in them that direct them to the target. So I heard that, and it also included communication nodes and electrical nodes and grids, and that's kind of targeting that gets away from here. All the thought I have about
It's all
hold on,
right.
stop. I just buried it. Okay,
Yeah.
let me turn this. I forgot to turn this off. We're going to go in 2 minutes. You're
Yes.
killing me. I got another phone coming, and I've been doing this for hours. But I asked Raja Sadawi if I should talk to you, and he said yes. You know Raja?
Who?
Raja Sadawi.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. I said, should I talk to you? And he said yes. Go ahead. We'll do
All
a
right.
couple more.
No, yeah, I'm talking about, let's complete this one, pick up from where you left, that they were even expanding to civilian targets.
Well, I think if you start talking about power grids and stuff that could affect military targets, I think really clearly you're getting out. The first list of targets was 35, I think. It's called a designated target list, DTL, and included runways and stuff to impact on the Syrian army, but not make it impossible for them to operate. There's a wonderful quote. Somebody said the target list we ended up with the B-52s, it was like a flying air cover for al-Nusra. You know, like close air support.
Yes,
Flying, it literally said like flying close air support for al-Nusra. Did you really want to do a bombing that's going to put al-Nusra in control, which will bring the Iranians going, you know, Sunni crazies, and what's Israel going to do? You think Israel's going to tolerate Salafists, or are you kidding me? I to this day, I think if Obama did, if you know, as I believe, and I don't know, you never know what's in man's head, but if the information about the makeup of the sarin and the target list that was brought to him by the Joint Chiefs, if that impacted on his decision, my own guess is he was happy it did, because it was a crazy plan.
Do you think the military still have the same reservation about any potential
Yes.
military action in Syria?
Yes, I do.
How about the intelligence community?
I don't know that much. I can say that there are elements in the intelligence community that are intelligent. If you're not so intelligent, you want to, you know, the president's powerful. You don't understand. You do understand, but you cannot understand how powerful it is. For example, I worked at the New York Times, and at the New York Times, I had a wonderful job. I could run around and make trouble. But most of the reporters have a beat, and that means they have to have access. And if it's a national security beat, they have to have access. And in order to have access, they can't go off on their own. They have to play the game. They have to, you know, get the briefings. They don't want to not be invited to a briefing. And the way the White House can punish you is if you're too feisty and too independent, they'll have a briefing and you don't get invited. You don't know about it.
The last one. We see almost disappearing act of the Israeli role in this. Do you think there was any kind of cooperation or any kind of facilitation by the Israelis to do some similar things in the
Well,
Syrian?
the Israelis talk very big.
Yeah.
In this case, I think if you go look at Google, and you look at Israel, Syria, Israel, Bashar, they have been very quiet. They haven't joined the people that keep on screaming, Syria, Bashar did it, he killed all the civilians. One day it was 1,400, the next day it's 200. You know what I mean, the numbers vary.
But they said there was some conversation prior to the attack that was picked up, and maybe the Israelis, they were listening or something like that, they provided to the Obama administration. Have you heard about that?
You know, I wrote a great deal about what we can do.
Yeah.
You know, there's times when you need Israel and times when you don't need Israel. We have capability. We don't always have it in real time. We can go back and hear it. But, for example, after the August 21 attack, we listened in real time in places in Turkey, of course. Why not? I'm not telling you a thing the Turkish government doesn't know. Of course they know what the capabilities are. Turkey's, you know, it's sophisticated. Their intelligence service is sophisticated.
Do you think
You keep on asking me what I think, and I
No,
got to warn you, watch
yeah.
out. It doesn't matter what I think.
Yeah, I know. But with your experience, the YouTube that was released.
Oh, I found you
lately.
saw I included it in my article
Yeah.
because, you know, he's talking about we can fire 8 missiles
Yes.
and pretend we did not. You know, false flag, casus belli. Given what else I was writing,
That
it's
was
hard-
encouraging for you?
well, it was very interesting, and you know, it just just in the last few days, the Syrian ambassador recently raised questions about some sort of same operation in Jobar, to the south, near the Jobar Gate, and so if you could somehow convince Obama to invoke the red line, you could maybe really make it much harder for Bashar to win. He's, you know, but once we agreed to the chemical deal, you understand, Obama, if he's going to bail out on the bombing, he's got to fall back on the chemical deal. And so that agreement, which we didn't, it was offered a year earlier. I'm just giving you my heuristic, my inner thinking on this. You understand the price of that agreement. That agreement called for Obama to be the president until next October. The UN agreement says for the next year, Bashar is going to be responsible.
Bashar to be the
Yeah,
next
it
president
recognized him. It recognized him as president. It was a complete walk away from what he was saying, because in effect, the UN basically said he's going to be president. And you know, the UN has been very cautious about. It's never said which side did what. And Elke Sellstrom, the head of the investigation unit for the UN, last September, at a news conference, said, "Well, one thing I will say, the warheads that were used at very short range, no more than 2 kilometers, 1.2 miles at the most, a mile or so, which doesn't suggest, and there's no sign that they were a serious weapon, as we know exists in the Syrian arsenal." I say, you know, if Syria wanted to, you're not going to fire nerve gas that close if you're a regular army unit, because the wind can change. You have to be pretty desperate. I find that all very interesting. I don't think, and mind you, I am not saying I know that one particular unit, we know nothing about who did what. Was there an El Nusra wing that did it? Was it done by a rogue unit of the Syrian army? Maybe, who knows? I'm not ruling out, I'm just saying that the sarin, I'm saying what the president was told by the Joint Chiefs, the sarin that we found was not military grade. We know what's in the Syrian stockpile. We know that because we communicate.
About Kerry's indictment, that he said we have evidence, and
Yeah, well, they all said it.
yeah,
They all said it. I mean, I think they believed it. You know, I never get mad at the press books when there's a woman who works she today, not only, she always breaks rules. Today she released statements they made to us. I don't think you have the right to unilaterally release. If they make a statement to us, it's our job to put it out. Not her job to give it to other journalists. But they just play by the rules. I don't even blame them. They're just doing their job.
great. Thank you very much.
Goodbye, my friend.
Appreciate it.